introduce us?
All right, guys, we are going to get started. Thanks again for coming out to today's Lunch and Learn with Dominique, Jay, and Victor. If you guys have any questions that are the folks that are in the office or in this room, you guys can just obviously raise your hand. But the people who are connecting via Google Hangouts or those who are in different offices or working from home, please log into your HIP chat and connect to the Lunch and Learn room, and you guys can add all your questions there.
Okay, well, we're gonna kick it off with this one sheet which we can send around afterwards, so you guys can have it to reference later. And then we're gonna go on some live demoing on the specific apps that we asked you to download. So, obviously, the content and what you're choosing to take photographs of is probably the most important part of Instagram. So, thinking about it like you're telling a story versus just taking pictures is definitely yeah.
So can you speak up just a tiny bit?
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, I was just saying that the content is the most important part of Instagram, because obviously you're taking pictures, but it's not just pictures. It's telling us you could tell a story with your feed. So if you think about it that way, you might get a little bit more inspired to have some fun with it. Definitely think about not just taking pictures out in your daily life, but including a different perspective, using a mixture of include people and products you love. Obviously, some beautiful pictures of food. Definitely consider incorporating pops of color with neutral tones, and just really have fun with it, and tell it like you're painting or you're doing a journaling. That's definitely gonna help bring your feed to life.
You'd also be surprised by the kind of content that you can get from even the simplest things, whether it's a section of your outfit or one of the examples here is the floor. So something that's really simple and you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that would be a great photo, might actually turn out to be a great piece of content.
Yes, exactly. And adding a human touch to the picture. So if you're going to take a picture of your ice cream or your drinks, including your hands and arranging your objects in a thoughtful way, is definitely going to enhance your feed and bring your photos to life. Before I go into lighting, I'm just going to also just go over a few styling and composition notes. Just thinking about angles when you're shooting, don't just take one photo, take a few, just even if you can't see what you're taking, you can hold your phone up and just shoot it different ways, or, just try different things. You could take a bunch of photos, then go through them afterwards. I think a lot of, instinct is just to take a picture, but if you actually just take a few minutes and do a few different angles, you'd be surprised that sometimes the best one is the one you kind of think might be not your first instinct to do. So definitely consider that. And then, if you are shooting straight on, always keep in mind your horizon line, and try to, you can always adjust it in the app. We'll show you how to adjust those things, but definitely, think about keeping your lines straight on the horizon, and that will really help your image and overall framing of it. And then going into cropping and framing, definitely things look a lot more interesting when they fall off frame or you crop into them. Say you're taking a little product lay down, you want
that first one.
Exactly, that first one. The sunglasses are slightly falling off the camera. There's some layering happening. Think about the textures and different layers that you can shoot on versus just shooting on a blank white table. You could shoot on even a jean jacket or some kind of cool rug, or bring in a fabric or a newspaper or journals or layer papers and stuff. It's going to be a lot more visually interesting than just shooting on plain white or just a blank table. So kind of keeping those things in the back of your head while taking your pictures is just going to make them look a lot better. And then if you're going to take any food images or food pics, beautiful food shots are great, but adding that human touch to them on Instagram, maybe you take a bite out of it or put a spoon in it. It's always a little bit more appetizing and cool looking if it's like, looks like you're enjoying it. It's kind of like a basic food styling tip, but something that a lot of people forget. So yeah, so then going back into lighting. Lighting is probably like the biggest make or break for a photo. I always say chase the good light, spend that extra time finding the pretty spot with like the good sun coming in, or, think about if you're going to go shoot pictures, like you want to pick that perfect time of day. So early in the morning or early evening is always best for shooting. Actually overcast and like foggy days are really great as well. Versus like the hard, unless you're really going for that like hard directional sunlight, which is and deep shadows, that's kind of obviously a little bit more tricky to capture a good photo, but just definitely lighting is always gonna be your friend, so just think about that if you want to get that really good picture. We can show you tips to like edit them after, but yeah, keep images clean and simple, and then always on mobile it's always just best to go a little brighter, like pump up the brightness, because it will just looks good.
Also in lighting, natural light, I don't know if this is a given, but natural light is always best, even if it's like any kind of indoor light. At nighttime, or like, oh, we'll just turn on a bunch of lights, that tends to make it still pretty yellow and tinged, and you're not going to get the same like natural kind of glowy effect in your photo as you would with natural light. So try to seek something daytime, like near a window, or like she was saying, outside when it's overcast. Fog and overcast also makes your skin look better versus like direct harsh sunlight.
I'm sure all of you here in SF have seen us like in the kitchen over in the corner. Like this photo that's up on the dock is the one that was actually taken in the office. Good girls.
That's in the kitchen,
in the office to get a good picture. If you like need an office photo, that's why we're always in there.
Did you move the tables?
Yeah, I think they moved the tables.
Yeah, so it was cleared out for a yoga session.
Oh.
But versus like, if you go out on 15, it's like terrible lighting down there. So if you got to get that like good picture, just come up 16, go, and that's a great spot. It's probably the only spot in the office.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about color, which some of you know is my favorite thing to play with. So with color, you kind of want to come up with your own visual voice, is kind of what I call it. Your aesthetic and your tone and how you're storytelling with photos. If something's not the color you want it, it's actually very, very easy to change it. And we're going to get into that with our live demo. But I feel like color is usually, I guess for us, and if your goal is to be regrammed, color is much better than black and white. So we always want to look for those bright, light colors. There's a note in here about sticking to either warm versus cool. I think you can play with that a little bit, but it's kind of like deciding like what you want your overall aesthetic to be like. You wouldn't want to jump from like deep, like warm browns and yellows to like light blues and purples. Like it doesn't, I guess, like seamlessly mesh. So kind of just like pick a lane, pick an aesthetic, and really stick to it, and it will help kind of guide your visual storytelling. And then pick your favorite filters and kind of try to stick with that. A lot of people ask like, oh, what filter do you use? And we'll get to that more later too, but it's not just about like throwing one filter to the max like effect on every single photo. Like each photo should be treated like a very separate, I guess, piece of art, if you will. And we'll take different editing steps and sometimes even different filters, but you do want to stay within the same family, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I only ever use like 2 filters.
Yeah. You'll find what works for you too. Like you're not going to use the exact same ones that Victor or I use necessarily, or the one that Jay uses.
Yeah, and depending on the time of day you shoot, you'll find, or like the subject matter, like certain filters are like better for skin tone, certain filters are like better for like morning light or soft light or products only.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of, once you get familiar with them, you can learn how to like tone them and increase them just to like play with the overall vibe and like mood of the image.
You also won't like edit, like what she was just saying, you won't edit a sunset the same way you would edit a portrait, the same way you would edit food styling. Yes. So keep that in mind when you are editing and looking for the kind of colors that you want to enhance, like what looks more appetizing Color-wise might not look the best on like a portrait of someone with skin tone. So those are a couple things to keep in mind. And then last tip with color is that if you're shooting indoors, especially if there's a lack of natural light, a lot of photos tend to look very yellow, and that can also take away from like that bright light effect. So toning down. Yeah, especially in here. So toning down the temperature in that case can also help with the brightness, bringing blue tones back in. So something to keep in mind is like, even if you don't notice it at first glance, like your photos might look yellower than you would like them to be.
Yeah, and I think that like one tip that I always go by is that like a filter is only going to enhance your picture. It's never going to like make it. It's not going to transform it into like something like regular to like magical thing. If it's not like a good picture, like you definitely want to keep in mind lighting and composition and everything else we discussed about, because filters will only enhance that and allow you to play more with the image versus like shadows and stuff is also very, very hard to filter and to remove.
Yeah, these tips like definitely go in order. It's like content, and then like once you have really good content, then you want really good lighting, and then once you have those two things, then color is kind of like the icing on the cake.
And actually, if you can scroll back up, I think it would be like kind of just to go all the way to the top, to scroll through like what makes these photos strong and why. This photo at the very first one of like the items, I kind of talked about it, like it's just like a product laydown, but the reason why it fills the frame really nicely, has great composition and color, and it's interesting. There's like that human element, the layered effect, has like a fun background. It's like lit really well. It just all in all, like it's a great little travel like moment. The one of Erin is like very for a selfie, like everyone's gonna take a selfie or get like their shot of them in their feed, but like the reason why this looks like so great is like the strong contrast, the color behind her. She found like a really fun wall. If you're gonna take a picture, like try to like have a less, you know, a like distracting background, and like the blue of her shirt, it complements really nicely with the background as well, like the little pop of this blue straw. So think about like, you know, those things if you want to get a great photo of yourself. And then the one of Maggie, it was like the floors. It's like that human element. It's really like the color story that's happening there is really nice. And it just like, you could see a little bit of her outfit, and it's just all in all, it's just like a great fun picture. And, you know, and then the cheersing shot, like everyone wants that cheers shot, that perfect one. And this is really fun. It's like a nice clean background, and the color, the drinks really pop. So it's, you know, and then everyone, it's got like a dynamic movement to it without being like too static. So there's just like going through all these pictures, like there's reasons why like they're kind of, your eyes get drawn to them. So it's just kind of thinking of that when you're taking your photo, like what can you do to make it even better? So, yeah.
In the second picture, the hair in front of the eyes, was that intentional or like just a matter of?
I mean, we'd have to ask Erin, but it was probably a happy coincidence of the wind blowing by. But yeah, I think that was probably just on.
I think that helps the picture.
Yeah, it definitely gives more
natural.
movement, you know.
It's also kind of nice, like if we were going to regram on like one of the main accounts, like
Yes.
a personal photo of someone, if there's like a lens flare or some hair covering or something, it makes it a little more like anonymous, like the viewer can kind of put themselves in that position versus someone just like clear face, just smiling at the camera.
Yeah.
Where that's like, someone's going to scroll through that on their feed. This is not for your personal accounts, but like on the popular account, someone's going to scroll through their feed and be like, I don't know that person, and just keep scrolling. Versus like, I don't know, it's just a look, like she was saying, more visually interesting and a little more anonymous.
Cool. And I think we would, like, moving on to the next section, I think it would be like a miss not to talk about Instagram stories, because Instagram has changed so much, and the way we like digest Instagram content has changed within the last year. So we did want to give a few tips about Instagram stories, because I have heard people don't know what to do with them, or they don't know kind of how to make them better. So I think like overall tips is like using a mixture of videos and photos to really keep your audience like engaged and be able to kind of see what you're trying to show them. It's either something like your desk and like show off like something new you got, or like play with your like coworkers or something at home that's going on. There's definitely like that element to be able to see into someone's life beyond the curated feed, which I think is a great place to show off on Instagram stories. And I think like you will notice that like people will definitely get experimental with boomerangs and like cool creative movements to show photography. Also, I've seen people play around where they're not moving but the background is moving, so it's like it doesn't always have to be that like awkward shimmy shake. So you can definitely play around with like different things and movements to make your stories more dynamic. But I think overall, I know we've been really pushing PS for All and wanting to share your content on our feeds to really give a better perspective of what the Pop Sugar brand is doing, not only in the office but also like on our own. So we're gonna go over some guidelines for PS for All, the type of content we're looking for, and some tips to get you regrammed on our accounts.
After this, all of you guys are going to be so good.
So you can scroll down to the general guidelines. So some like clear general guidelines that we want is we want well-lit images with interesting perspectives. We want to give our followers a unique view at what we're doing, and we want to share things that aren't necessarily being shown on Instagram, especially like our competitors or like on other like influencers. We really want to highlight content that is like unique to the brand, even if it's something we're regramming. So I would definitely like, when we're like picking out these images, we're always looking for bright images. They don't necessarily have to be white, but I think like when you think bright, you definitely want to be able to see the content without having it be blurry or like overexposed. So I think that definitely helps when you're using like natural light, or you're sometimes it's even like making sure that the shadows aren't in view of the crop. Even sometimes cropping those out can really help an image. Travel photos. We've gotten a lot of submission for travel photos, but I think the ones that always stand out and the ones that we end up regramming are the ones that have a really like clear focal point. Like, yes, like beaches are always going to be really pretty, but like we want to be able to give off like a unique perspective. So if it's either like a striking sunset, maybe it's like repetition of like palm trees, or maybe there's like a landmark or a monument in the background that really is able to like bring the picture to the next level and really be able to give us something that we want to share with our followers too. And I think sometimes the best sort of travel images that do well, we just posted one today. It was like all about color, and it was about showing different amounts of color and different angles and different coming in from different places in the photo. So I think it's like being able to like think about your crop, or thinking about like what part of like this thing I'm looking at or that I want to share with my followers, even with Pop Sugar, is like going to be the most interesting, going to be the most eye-catching. Because like Dominique said, we want people to like stop by and like double tap on all our content, and like being able to show them a very like clear focal point sometimes helps with that. We're going to talk a little bit about filters later, but I think like overall, we love color and we love to be able to display that, but sometimes we don't want it to look oversaturated. So Dominique is going to show us how she really uses filters to bring out color, but never really like making it look where it looks almost unnatural. I think like
Rainbowy.
Yeah, it's like you want it to be like very like impressive, but you don't want it to be like, wow, how many filters did it take for this? Or like how much did we bump with the saturation? Like I think people obviously know we filter things and we add sort of like digital magic to our photos, but I think it's all in good measure. One really big note is that for PS for All, we really want it to be the go-to tag for content that is up to our standards in terms of something we want to regram or something that we can see on PopStock. We want it to be content that's maybe like going beyond your daily work life. So you would want to maybe do like a vacation that you really want, have really good pictures to share from, or something you did on the weekend, after work, or work. It can be during work, but I think what we want to populate PS for All is with stuff that isn't like office parties or like behind the scenes of like a set, or being able to show things that are beyond work, because our followers might not be super interested in our like day-to-day, but they will be interested in seeing your personality shine through in different ways. Like, what are your hobbies? And maybe taking a really great shot of you playing tennis, or maybe a great like shot of you at the beach on your trip doing yoga or something like that. So I think for anything that has to do with more like culture or work-related stuff, we can definitely hashtag with Pop Share Your Life, and I think that helps Kat a lot to be able to share on our Pop Share Your Life account too. But yeah, we want to keep PS for All very inspirational, a lot of eye candy. So no need to tag your selfies or photos that are like really show off you. Our brand account on our main is doesn't always feature people, and I think it's very intentional because we want to be able to have like people feel inclusive.
Like insert
and
yourself here.
insert yourself in our page and be able to feel like you could be a part of our journey on Instagram. So we're not really looking to feature people. We do often if it's like very unique or Macy at a Color Factory, there's an example where she regrammed, and I think that those are all great like ways to use it. But I think that if you're going to be doing something more where you want your coworkers to see, or maybe something you want to share with the company, definitely focus more on Pop Share Your Life. PS for All is also opened up to our influencers or other Instagram followers, so they're going to be tagging more content. So we want to be able to like have it all look really nice for us to like pick from and also use on our posts too, because I think that the quality of our post content, like when we're doing up on an editorial site, like the images are really great and they have to be high quality for us to be able to use them. So we want to be able to keep that in mind too.
Yeah, that's like a good rule of thumb, the editorial thing. Like if you would use this kind of image for an article, then that's the kind of caliber of photo that we recommend.
And I think I wanted to include a wish list of what we want to feature on Pop Sugar for fall. We're moving away from the beach and like the summer themes, and we're looking more into like light and bright fall seasonal content. So we're going to be looking for foliage, candles, cozy nooks, and a lot of fall decor, and that could be like anything from pumpkins or just like fun fall things that we want to regram. Yeah, book pictures. But I think
always need book photos.
the key, I think, is light and bright. We still want to keep that in our feed, so definitely keep that in mind when you're taking these. And I think that like orange works really well when it's really like lit really well, and like these fall colors are already so dark at times, so we really want to contrast them with a more light and bright atmosphere. Statement makeup. I think the only time when you really should send us a selfie is like if you're showing off like a really cool lip color or a haircut or maybe a really nice hairstyle like this one of Macy from a shoot that she tried to take a picture of by herself. I think that those are really good examples when you would want to share something that's of you, and it's because it makes it really clear that it's about the beauty angle. Our beauty followers are really obsessed with like really zooming in and seeing up close details of the look. So we really want to stay with that with stuff you're regramming, stuff we're regramming and that you're tagging us in. For fall fitness content, I think Dominique can shed a little bit more light, but I think we're going to be moving away from a bit of the like smoothie bowl and looking for more like healthy food shots. So if you have any healthy recipes you want to share that are really beautiful, I think fall is a really great time for produce too. So I think there will be a lot of opportunities to share that. But also like fashion, we can't forget fitness fashion. Our followers are obsessed with sneakers. Like send us pictures of your like shoe pictures or maybe like your leggings. That again, it's of you, but it's not necessarily a focus on like a person, more about the statement.
Or the movement.
Yes, or the movement is a really good example of that. And then scenic workout images work really well on our account.
Yeah. We'd love more like running shots. That would be really great.
Yeah, so like not only yoga, running, if you're doing anything else outside while the weather's really great here in San Francisco or in other offices, I think doing things that are outside and taking pictures of them, especially if you're wearing a really nice outfit. That's the only reason why we work out, right? And then I think this will really help our editorial team, but also us as we're like looking for Halloween costumes before Halloween. If you're going to any Halloween parties, take pictures of your costumes, tag them PS for All, but we really want to make sure that they're like really clear and lit properly. So try to take them during the day if you can, maybe
before you go out.
Before you go out, not at the party. with a
Find
very
nice clean wall.
yes, like a neutral background. Stay away from like black and dark colors. That's generally something we don't really regram. But I think that overall having like a nice, clean, well lit, even like we said, like a wall in our kitchen is a very good example of how easy it can be. Take a picture of it, send it over. We're always looking for more Halloween costume ideas to share with our followers.
But don't just like smile at the camera and like just, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
don't,
be dynamic about it.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I don't
It's
know how to say
funny,
it.
like make us like
Yeah, some
feel
kind
the
of
humor.
like pose or something, or maybe it's just like a section of the costume. But like if it's just a dead-on shot of a person, like our followers aren't gonna know. Like if it's a picture of me, it's like standing here in a dress, or like I don't know this person, and just keep moving. So try to be, I guess, mindful of like the way that you're posing and taking the photo.
Now we're gonna be doing some demos because I know that's sometimes the big question, like how did you edit this?
Yeah.
So Dominique is gonna start off by demoing an image that she edited.
Should we have had questions before?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions they want to submit or maybe ask here that are in front of us? Any questions? Maybe that we skipped through or we went too fast on a certain section.
All right.
If you do, just send them over to the hip chat room and Kat will help us answer them.
So I'm going to start with a color story. It's one of my favorite apps that has come out recently. And this is like a more dramatic example. I know we said that we don't go too far with color, so this would be probably like the very edge of the spectrum. I took
Also, this is for if you're shooting for your personal account, you can do whatever you want. If you're trying to shoot for Pop Sugar, like there's just some guidelines like within the company, like what are what we're looking for. But for your own personal, you should treat it however you want. And it's like your field, like we were talking about how it's more of like a journaling to us sometimes, like when you're editing photos. So feel free to like get crazy.
Yeah. This is also like just to show you how much you actually can do with these apps. Like if you don't like the color of something, or if the lighting is not what you want, or the perspective, or how it's angled, you can really do a ton. And now you can even do it with videos and boomerangs with a color story. So that's why I'm pretty obsessed with this app. So I'm going to show you how this works, and please like feel free to stop me or ask me to clarify or speak up or anything. So this is the original video. So you import it. And then you'll have a couple options once you get in there. I'm going to just start with the color, obviously. You go into Tools, and then Adjust, and then you have this whole menu of things that you can use: curves, clarity, contrast, brightness. I pretty much always, like we were saying earlier, brighten everything. So just to get started, so you can kind of see what you're working with, I'll take it up a little bit in brightness. And then I'll go into the high color, mid-tone color, and shadow color, and that's where you can really get into adding things. So I wanted it to be pink. I wanted a pink sunset. It was cloudy, so I made my own pink sunset. So I'll take the reds up a little bit, and you can kind of see how already you're highlighting a lot of pink. But let's say you don't want the tower itself to be that orange. So then I'm going to go into this mid-tone color and maybe take the red down a little bit. Maybe shadows. And so like right there, you've gone like up already, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. I'll go back into curves maybe and kind of play with that a little bit to see if I want to make this part darker or lighter. So it's really nuanced. I won't spend too much time on this, but you can really play with this and get like the exact look of something that you want. And then there are also filters. So then you would go to the home screen. So filters, effects, tools, you're going to choose filters. I know these a little better because I use this a lot. So I have certain filters that I'll go to for something specific. So I know that this glow one will make something really pink. So I don't want it to be too extreme. I'll take it down a little bit and then probably add another one. So this is another thing you can add, I guess, the filters on top of each other, which is not a lot of apps let you do that right now. So you can add and do little pieces at a time. So yeah, that's like how you can take something from that to this, and then it ends up being a video. It's a little different from what I did the first time, but then you've got that.
So that kind of goes to like every time you edit a picture, like even if you do it, like she did it like before this and then it was completely different.
Yeah.
And so the main thing is like, don't be scared. Like, get in the app and figure out what all these things do. Like, you're like, what's curves? Well, like, just go ahead and play with it and like figure it out, because like every single time a tool can be slightly different on different images. So just get in there and see what works and what you like. So yeah.
How did you know this would be the perfect video to work on? Or like, how did you choose to work on this?
I just liked it. Like, how did I choose this for myself?
Yes, like the brightness was a part of it. Like you saw that you could actually modify it.
You can do a lot with pretty much anything. Like, I shot it at a time that was still pretty bright. Like, I didn't wait until nighttime. So it was like something that was it was an easy canvas, essentially.
Yeah, I think generally there was like no shadows, too many shadows in the image. Like
Oh, right.
the tower wasn't holding a shadow on the street, so it was a very like well lit image, and the like direction that she took it was like where the light was coming from too. Yeah, it's all straight. So I think that those are like all key. I think like sometimes we like immediately know which image would work best, but I think
Right.
like for beginners, it's really important to like being able to determine like what makes a good image. And so like I think like just looking at how like straight the horizon line is, focusing on how the light is like facing the direction that you're shooting.
Strong focus, like a focal point.
The lines of like where the like traffic is moving is like very easy for the eye to see.
This is great. I didn't know how to articulate any of this.
Well, anytime you're taking photos of like a road or like a path, like think about like which way are the angles and like the road is leading you. Like your eye is gonna go down that. So if you're taking a picture and there's like the way that this is leading directly to the tower, it just takes your eye straight to that. So if she were to take it at like a different angle, it might not be as compelling, because it would almost like be jarring to see like the road's going like the wrong way, or like the directional line. So I think that there's obviously just some elements, like Victor was saying, that make an image automatically just make an image like more visually interesting and compelling and like easy on the eye.
Oh, right. It's a thing in the tools.
So it's a way to you can adjust all your levels of your so on the spectrum of adjusting like the levels and brightness of your photo, Curves allows you to adjust like everything, and it's just basically this one that brings out the blacks, the whites. You can so it's like the full color spectrum, so you can really get in there and you can add different points of measure. It's a tool that we use every day, like in Photoshop, but they've kind of made a version for the phone. So it can get a little crazy if you add too many, but I think a general, when you bring it up, it brightens it, and when you bring down the bottom one, it makes it darker. It brings out the blacks.
Oops. Given input brightness,
Yes.
you look up the output brightness.
Yes.
So when it's a straight line, it's doing nothing. And then when you curve it around, you're changing what used to be a certain output brightness is now a different.
What he said.
Thank you.
Yes.
No. Okay.
Like, pretty much never.
I sometimes do. I find that like when I'm regramming somebody, I don't ever really put a filter over it. So like, but maybe it could use a little brightening. So that's when I would use the tool.
Yeah, like last
Very-
minute edits.
Yeah.
I don't ever edit sound mistaken.
Yeah, very rarely do I ever use like an Instagram filter for videos or for general pictures. But like they're great. The tools are great and very similar for like when you want to like brighten it or like bump up the contrast and maybe like fix the temperature. I always those are my go-to because it's just easy. But filters, I would definitely think that there's so many apps that are doing a way better job.
Sarah Siegel on the chat room would like someone to repeat the explanation of curves. Like the technical explanation.
So there is the technical side, but it's basically like the very simple version is that it's a way to brighten your photo as well as add contrast and bring out the blacks in your image in one tool. So you can achieve a lot of this by not using curves at all. You can go into the brightness and the contrast and all these, but if you can get good at curves and get like the small nuances of curves, it's actually a better, more powerful tool to be using. But if it's a scary tool, a lot of people are scared of it, so you can avoid it.
I never use curves.
Yeah, I use curves, but I'm in Photoshop like every day of my life, so it's a little bit different. But you could definitely just use the brightness contrast. So
Yeah, maybe I'll just skip curves going forward.
yeah, maybe.
This is a color story, or I think it might just be color story. We
Yeah,
haven't
color story.
You
come
haven't
to that.
determined which one it is.
Their branding's weird.
So then, Victor, you
We'll do this
Yeah,
one, and then I'll
let's
do
go,
Which picture is it?
the Big Ben one. So here you can do. I put sorry.
I'm going to be demoing Visco because we understand that it's a little intimidating and the platform isn't very user friendly. So Jay's donated these pictures for me to edit. So usually for Visco, as it's one of the portions of the app is that you can get different filters. Hopefully Jay has some of my go-tos. Oh, true. But I think it looks like Dominique has bought all the filters, so she's a fan. So I usually
yeah, that's the thing. You have to. There's like packs of filters, and so you might want to like explore what pack you like. They give you lots of examples of different photo treatments. So if you just download the app as is, you're only going to get a very small amount. But they're not like they're pretty cheap. They're like a couple dollars or whatever to get like an extension pack.
Yeah.
You can talk to us after, and we can tell you ones to not get if you want.
Yeah.
There are a few to avoid.
But I think what I always get asked is like, how do you make a picture brighter or maybe like wider? Dominique likes S1, but you can definitely tell that it's more her aesthetic in the pink direction. I always go to S2. It's a little bit warmer in terms of like the white tends to be a little bit more yellow. And Jay likes S3, so we're all over the S range. But I'm gonna go with S2. I feel like it doesn't make anything too yellow. So like right away, one of the things that I will look at, this picture for S2 didn't do too much where it was like overly like exposed or made it look very like unnatural. But I think I would always recommend like testing, see what it looks like when you bump it down a little bit, and it always can give you like the same effect later on when you do like more editing, like exposure or like contrast. But adding that filter sometimes just like makes the picture a little bit more even, especially when there's like shadows and like different lighting involved. But this one, since it's a little dark, I would probably go with like a more, I'll do +9. I'll go in and maybe bump up the exposure a little bit, and that already is helping it a lot. As you can see, I didn't do too much because I think that the picture, you still want to be able to see the dog's face. And when I bump it up too much, I don't like how it blows up the background and makes it look very like unnatural, I would say. So maybe I would do something in the middle. I really like the shadows on the dog's face. And something for me is that I always try to do is experiment with the contrast. Sometimes the contrast can bump up the overall brightness too, but I don't think this one needs it. A big debate that me and Jay have is that I am more on the cooler end of my pictures. I love like a nice cool like bluish white, while she generally likes a little bit more yellowish. So I'll probably bump it down a little bit.
It depends on the image.
So as you can see, like we've gone a long way from this image now, but as you can even make it a little bit more warmer. Sometimes that really like works well when there's a lot of like weight, and you want to like really show that. And sometimes when you do too cool, it can really affect the overall look of it. But I always use the temperature tool when something's like a little too overexposed or something. little bit too saturated, bringing it down in corners can really like help balance the white of an image.
Like
Yes.
if you are trying to shoot something like, just an example of like when that would be great to use, like and make it feel a little bit, it's like you want that cozy shot in the morning, like coffee, like those shots always like give me warm because it gives the skin mood and tone of it. And then cooler shots, like anything like product or clean or white, if you want it to be very crisp, but that's when you want the cooler.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Just one note about brightness. I know we always are like brighter is better, always go a little brighter. There is such a thing as too bright, where you can lose the contrast, the depth of the photo, the details, like, and it will become very flat, one-dimensional, and flat looking almost. So Victor was really conscious about the contrast level, and then you can also deepen the shadows a little bit, as well as intensify the clarity. So if you need to brighten quite a bit, but you don't want to lose the depth of your image, you don't want to look washed out, those are a couple things to keep in mind: shadows, contrast, and clarity.
Had any brain or
Yeah.
Right. Green is like garbage. It's trash. Don't use it.
One tool that I really like for VSCO, and I think that it makes it really good for portraits, and maybe a color story hasn't been able to do for me, is the skin tone tool. I think for especially when you're taking like portraits and beauty shots, you'll notice when you add filters, your skin will look a little bit weird or sometimes like mesh, like with the filter you've chosen. But VSCO allows you to edit that, so we can pay attention to the dog. How if I go to the right a little bit, it's a little bit more on the pinker side. So like undertones are a little bit like pinker, and it's a little bit more red. But if we go on the other end of the spectrum, as you can see, the picture's already like losing its overall white balance, and it's becoming a little bit more yellowy. So I usually personally tend to go to the middle to bring out the skin tone, and sometimes help when, especially when I'm brightening someone that has fair skin, sometimes their skin will get washed out. So I'll pump up back the life into it with a little bit of the like more red tones in it. And I can find that sometimes helps an image. For this little dog, I'll probably leave it very low. But yeah, I think that's overall like some key VSCO hacks that I always go to too.
And then one other thing while we have this image up, this was shot with the portrait mode. Definitely, if you have the new iPhone with the portrait mode, use it, but don't abuse it. It doesn't work great on product unless, I mean, you just have to experiment because it is kind of a hack camera effect, and it works really great on faces and like dogs and something with a central focal point. But don't try to use it for like scenes or large, like, landscapes. It's gonna actually make your photo so gray and blurry. It really does need to have like a central focus, but it works better when it's a natural like thing and not like a stiff, like an object with like hard lines, because you'll actually be able to see the blurred edge, because it is like a feature in there that's not a match. It's not. Just like
it's not the lens.
It's not, yeah, exactly. So it's kind of fake, but it does work really, really nice on people. And
also a lot of light. It looks, and it will tell you like there's not enough light to do this.
The lower the lighting, the grainier the photo will be.
Yeah.
Portrait mode, and it actually will look pretty bad.
Yeah, use it in natural light. You can outside.
That can be as like easy as like turning something to face where the light's coming from.
Yeah.
Like let's say you're taking something in a window, like you could just slightly re-angle it more toward where the light is coming in.
Sometimes it's not even a direct. I know for like when we're shooting in the kitchen, the wall isn't getting its direct light, so we'll often move people where it's like they're sitting in front of the wall still, but they're like sort of facing the window, so they're still getting that like amount of light coming to their face. But you can still get like a white background and not necessarily get something busy, like someone making a coffee in the morning. Yeah, she'll do that in Snapseed.
How to straighten the horizon.
Oh yes. All right, so Snapseed I think is like the most wizardy of all of the tools. It's got a lot of like really pinpoint specific features that don't necessarily have to do with like filtering, but are more about changing certain aspects of the photo. So here's an example of one I took the other day. Obviously, I didn't want like the scaffolding in the photo. It's a little bit gray, it's a little bit drab, but in person, like I'm sure you guys have experienced this, like seeing something in person, it seems like so huge and magnificent, and you take a photo and it's a little bit dull and lackluster. So I'm just gonna start really quick with the healing brush tool on Snapseed, which is something that can eliminate anything from a pimple to a person in a photo.
Breeze, crumbs.
So you can do something like this, and probably, I don't know how this is gonna look actually, but it'll like take out the entire tower. Like you could just do that and like all of a sudden now it's just sky. So it's, obviously I wouldn't do that in this example, but that's like one of the tools that I think is really important in Snapseed. If you're using this to like, maybe there's like a rogue person in the background of your photo. I did this, like I took a picture of my mom and myself in front of the Eiffel Tower, and like some jerk like ran in the background, and so I got rid of him really quick with this little brush tool. But if I were trying to get rid of this, I would probably try to use something like this. It takes a little bit of practice because it's trying to guess like based on the pixels around it, and then repopulate that pixel section with its best guess. So you have to kind of play with it a little bit, and it's never going to be perfect, but you can do a lot of stuff with it, and I would really emphasize to play around with that part of the tool. I'm going to transform this a little bit, which is perspective and rotation, because it's a little crooked. Obviously, it's a lot taller than me, so I took it from very far down. So the vertical perspective, you can kind of go like this and see how to straighten it a little bit more. You don't always want to go that extreme because things can look curved and off, and it'll be like sort of visually disturbing. But in this case, I'm just going to show you guys kind of the extreme of what you can do with these apps. I'm also going to crop it to try to get rid of the scaffolding.
So which feature was that?
So this one, I'm sorry, that was the transform. And that one you can do vertical perspective and tilt things that way. You can do horizontal perspective based on like if you took it from the side,
Yeah, this is great.
or it's not dead on.
Like you are trying to take something straight, but then you accidentally didn't realize you curved your hand slightly, and your camera's like a little bit like this way or this way. You can kind of adjust those little small things by using this feature.
Yeah. Snapseed's like a great way to remove user error. Like you can pretty much make it look like you took a flawless photo with a few little tweaks on this because of the capabilities of the app. The other thing on Transform is that it gives you the rotation option without cutting off part of your photo. I know in like a lot of apps, or even in, I think like just the photo app itself, when you turn a photo, it's gonna cut those sections off to keep it within the parameters. But this will actually do the same kind of thing with like the auto population of the pixels around it. So you can kind of see it here, like that black area. Once you release it, it'll guess what it thinks is supposed to be next to it and fill it in. It typically only works if it's like the sky or water or something like that. If it's like people or design on a building, it's going to be a little different, obviously, because it can't guess what that looks like. But that's another thing. So this rotate feature is a little different. That's going to cut parts of the photo, as you can see. I'm going to crop this a little bit to get rid of the scaffolding. And then for the rest of the scaffolding, that's where I would probably use the healing tool. And when I say probably, I mean it's 100% what I did. Kind of get rid of that. And like I said, this is something you have to play with. And sometimes you have to go just like a little bit at a time to make it look as smooth as possible. You can get like really refined in here. So yeah, that's like, that's getting annoying. But how you would get rid of something like that, I would go a little further. You can also do the same things that you would do in Visco. So you can adjust the brightness. I would probably do the ambiance because I'm actually going to end up playing with the clouds a little bit in a color story later on. I'll just show you the final product after. I'd probably bump the highlights, but then like I was saying, you can be a little too bright, so I'd take the shadows down a little bit. You can play with the temperature, so you can go cooler if you want to make it look more blue, warmer if you want to enhance the gold tones. I really like the gold, so I was going to go warmer. And then you kind of go from that to that. I would enhance the details a little bit in structure. And then I would eventually put it through in a color story to add some like purple tones to it. So I went from that photo here to that one. So it's more colorful, more interesting, more clean. You don't see any of the scaffolding from the construction. And it kind of makes like a meh kind of cloudy day photo turn into something a little bolder and brighter. And You can put whatever kind of color you want on that. I can also repeat any like steps or tips if anyone needs that. I think but yeah, I would really emphasize that Snapseed is what I go to a lot. There's also the other feature that's really unique to this particular app is the selective tool. So if you just want to highlight a certain part of the photo, like the whites, then you can just edit that, which is, I think, the only app that features like a selective
Well,
of the ones we talked about.
yes.
And that's pretty much the Snapseed 101. I'm happy to go over that more in detail afterward, but we'd love to take questions.
Or if anyone has a picture.
Oh yeah, we
really
can also
wanna-
do like a live edit of someone else's photo if you have one.
Do you guys ever use stylus pens when you're editing photos on your phone?
I
you
tried
have.
before on Instagram stories, and it was really handy for like handwriting.
Yeah.
But it's just something you have to get used to. And like not always very like intuitive.
I noticed with these tools, do you ever go to Photoshop or then go back to the iPhone?
Right. It depends on the photo. If it's something that I'm doing for an article, like, and it's worthy of the time to spend on Photoshop, I actually prefer Lightroom because I'm the color person. I like playing with the colors. But if it's something that needs like more of an overhaul that I can't get, especially with something like that healing tool where you can take out certain parts and repopulate. If it's not working, I might import it to Photoshop and use the healing brush. Same thing.
There is a Photoshop app.
Yeah, like
I
Photoshop
have it, and I think you just have to have the Photoshop license to use it, but I think most of us do. So you can see if you can download that. And it's
So what is
free.
your most sophisticated? This is the thing. Is it Photoshop? Is that the?
Yeah.
But of the three apps we showed, I would say Snapseed does a really good job of
Snapseed's probably like the closest to like a Photoshop app that isn't the actual Photoshop app.
It's also the one you want to spend the most time in because it's very, very
I've had this for like 4 years.
I
and
would
so-
just not be afraid. Like, I feel like even when I'm teaching people to use real Photoshop, it's like, don't be afraid of the tools. Like, just, you're not going to ruin it.
Yeah, and you can always hit undo.
Yeah, there's always an undo. So,
Oh, there is one more feature actually of Snapseed that I think is important. So like, let's say you really want to tune the image and make it really bright, but it's too bright for one section. So you can save that brightness. You go back into your edits, you view your edits, you select that tune image, and then you can take this brush and then you say, I don't want any of that brightness like right here.
it's like masking. I don't know if anyone
Yeah,
knows
It's like a clipping mask.
Photoshop, but it's like,
So then you can like use this whole tune image. So you don't have to do something like pinpoint specific. You can do the whole thing and then paint exactly where you want certain things, which is, I think, really cool.
Any other questions?
I mean, it depends.
Sometimes like 1 minute and sometimes like a couple hours. Not knowing.
It's actually true. Like sometimes things are just lined up perfectly. The lighting is great. It doesn't need any retouching, and you can just like maybe brighten it a tiny bit and post it. And other times, like you're really trying to get a specific product shot or something that you need for a story or something that you need for Instagram, and you're like, this is what I'm working with very minimal resources, and it'll take like complete overhaul. I've helped people with photos that are like dimly lit inside. It's a flat lay, things are wrinkled, and you have to just like work and work and work. And that can actually, like, the more times you put it through the apps, the more compressed it becomes. Then you start to see, if you zoom in, you'll see like little faint vertical lines, kind of like lines almost.
And that's when you're like, you know what, scrap this.
Yeah,
restart.
that's like, you've gone too far.
I mean, it's the same in like professional photography too. Like, you see all the photos on like Hopstop or all the photos we take from like the brand. You know, it takes a lot of time and work and like to get the photos to be like just like come to life like that. And even with the most professional photographers and like amazing lighting setup, like almost all photos need some some retouching. And even if it's just like a small like adjustment on like the color balance or the brightness or bringing out the contrast just a little bit, almost every photo needs some type of retouching to bring it to full potential.
I note about composition. One way that you can kind of think about composition that will kind of help is if you try and break up your own words.
Oh, like this one.
So, for example, Sarah asked the question about why the Eiffel Tower photo we're editing was so good.
Yeah.
And part of that is because the horizon was about a third of the way up the photo. And it's just like something about the way the human eye is that
Yeah,
thirds
the
tend
thirds.
to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for stopping by. We're always happy to answer any like editing questions one-on-one if you just like want to chat us or like send us an email
Or
or like
photo.
in person. Yeah.
We'll edit your photos.
But thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good to have you. Yes, girl.